What's going on, everybody? Cleebus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G Stylus 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with the 1080p resolution, a PPI of 399, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, we're getting a 6.4-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display. This phone also has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 403, and a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. Now, I will say, both phones here do have really good displays, but on one hand, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, at 6.6 inches with a 20:9 aspect ratio versus 6.4 inches with a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. When it comes to size and dimensions, the Moto G Stylus 5G does have an advantage. It is of course a bit larger, and it does also have a slightly taller and more narrow form factor. So in general, if you're going to be consuming a lot of content, this can definitely be a good thing. On the other hand, despite both phones having really good image quality, the A54 5G with the Super AMOLED versus a regular IPS LCD with the Moto G Stylus 5G is going to have significantly nicer image quality. The display is a bit brighter, the colors are more rich and vibrant, and the viewing angles are better too. So if you're outside in the sun, for example, or really in any kind of bright area, the A54 5G is going to be a bit easier to see. But honestly, these differences are really more on the subtle side, and in general, no matter which phone you get here, you will get a great display regardless. Now for storage, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, we're getting 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the A54 5G, we're getting 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. Now, before we get into this, I do want to point out, first of all, the Moto G Stylus 5G in this video is factory unlocked, and if you end up getting it through a carrier, the storage could be different. In addition to this, with the A54 5G, I believe there is a factory unlocked version of this phone too that has 256. So in general, with either phone here, if you do want that much storage, you can get it. But honestly, for the average user, I feel like even 128 is really plenty. So if you're a power user, then you might want to consider getting a factory unlocked version of either phone that has more storage. But in general, the common version of each phone you find through a carrier, which does have 128GB, is still going to be plenty of storage for the average user. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they also have fingerprint scanners too. With the Moto G Stylus 5G, it's right here on the power key, and with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, it's in the display. So a bit more of a premium kind of look. But starting with the Moto G Stylus 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the A54 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners worked real well, no issues at all. And again, both phones have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the cameras here, up front, both phones have real nice looking hole punch designs for the selfie cameras. The Moto G Stylus 5G has 16 megapixels, and the A54 5G has 32. Then on the back, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, we got a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera that also doubles as a macro camera. With the A54 5G, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. So feature wise, they're pretty much the same. With the Moto G Stylus 5G, it's kind of cool they combine the ultra wide camera and macro camera. Last year's Moto G Stylus 5G did pretty much the same thing. And then both phones do have their depth sensing cameras combined into the main cameras, so in case you're wondering, portrait mode still works perfectly fine here. Also keep in mind for video, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, despite having a max recording quality of 1080p in the front camera, it can actually record 4K videos in the rear, which for a Motorola, this definitely is impressive. And with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, it can record 4K videos in both the rear and front cameras. And now, I feel like for the average user, being able to record 4K videos may or may not even be important to you at all. But if it is, it's probably mostly going to be in the rear camera anyway. But if you're maybe doing like a vlog or something, and you want to capture something with the selfie camera, but you also want to record in 4K, then in that case, the A54 5G will have an advantage. But again, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, I am impressed it can at least record 4K videos in the rear camera, so there's definitely that. Now to give you an idea of what these cameras can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Moto G Stylus 5G. Overall, for what it is, the photo quality here is great. Maybe not quite as good as like an entry-level flagship phone. So like if you compare this to something like a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, for example, the S21 FE is definitely on a much higher level. So if you're coming from something like, say, a Samsung Galaxy S9 or S10, for example, that's a bit older but also a bit higher end, then in that case, this camera might feel like a bit of a downgrade, because while actually having surprisingly good photo quality for what it is, it's still not quite flagship level. But for the average user, I feel like this is really completely fine. I mean, to take an occasional Instagram photo every now and then, or vacation photos for your own memories, sending things to friends and family, or maybe using Snapchat or something like that, you really don't need a flagship phone. I feel like a lot of people think they need a much better camera than they actually do. And for most people, I do think something like the Moto G Stylus 5G will be perfectly fine. And then here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. Now when it comes to which one is better between the two, the photos are right here, so I'll let you decide that for yourself. But in general, just like the Moto G Stylus 5G, for a mid-range phone, I do think the photo quality here is great. So in general, for the average user, this camera setup will probably do pretty much everything you need it to do. So either way, if you're looking for an affordable phone that has a really good camera, you really won't go wrong with either one here. So in general, really the main difference between these two when it comes to the camera is that, again, despite both phones being able to record 4K videos in the rear camera, only the A54 5G can record in the front. Because again, for the selfie camera, the Moto G Stylus 5G can only record in 1080p. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Moto G Stylus 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 processor. With the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM here as well with the Exynos 1380 processor. Overall, when it comes to performance, I feel like these phones are really around the same level, and this is definitely not a bad thing, because both phones here have really good performance, and for the average user, for more basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, mobile gaming, and really stuff people typically use smartphones for anyway, I do think you will get a great experience with either phone here. Now, that being said, if you are more of a power user, if you're really going to be on your phone all day doing stuff like high performance mobile gaming, or maybe editing a video on CapCut, for example, for that kind of use, you might want to get something a bit faster. But in general, for normal everyday use, either phone here will be a great choice. Now I ran a benchmark test on each phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see, not really a significant difference here, but I would just keep in mind if you're looking for a mid-range phone with pretty good performance, but you don't need the absolute top of the line. Again, either phone here will be a great choice. For the batteries, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Stylus 5G supporting 20W fast charging, and the A54 5G supporting 25. So really hardly a difference here. I guess you could say the A54 5G has the advantage here, since really the only difference is the slight difference in charging speed, but unless you have a 25W fast charger, which I feel like the average person doesn't, you're probably not going to notice a difference. And I charged the Moto G Stylus 5G from 20% to 79% right before this video. I feel like it was charging for maybe 30 minutes. So in general, the charging speed is perfectly fine for either phone here. And aside from that, with 5000 mAh batteries, you can expect to get great battery life with either phone, as well as overall longevity down the road. So if you're looking for a phone that has a great battery, either phone here will be a great choice. For the software, both phones have Android 13, but keep in mind Samsung has pretty much the best software support you can get, along with Google, I guess. So if you're looking for a phone that has a bunch of major updates coming in the future, the A54 5G will definitely have an advantage. Because while the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 will eventually, in theory, get Android 14, Motorola's updates are kind of unpredictable. I mean, I was expecting the 2022 version of this phone to get Android 13, and it still has Android 12, so kind of disappointing there. Whereas with the A54 5G, I know this phone is going to get Android 14, 15, 16, and 17. So if you're planning on keeping your phone for maybe multiple years, and you want to have the latest version of Android the whole time, then the A54 5G will definitely be a great choice. But again, both phones currently have Android 13, which is the latest version of Android. So if that's really all you're looking for, then either one will be fine. When it comes to other features, both phones have NFC. So if you like to use tap and pay, you won't have to worry about that with either of them. But keep in mind, the A54 5G unfortunately does not have a headphone jack, whereas the Moto G Stylus 5G does. So yeah, if you have a normal pair of wired headphones and having a headphone jack is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. And in addition to this, as the name implies, the Moto G Stylus 5G obviously does have a stylus. And in general, if you're looking for a phone that has a stylus that's not the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, then when it comes to new phones, this is pretty much your only option. I mean, I guess there's the Moto G Stylus 4G 2023, and then some of the older versions of this phone, and if you're on Metro, the TCL Stylus 5G. But when it comes to non-Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra stylus phones in 2023, this is pretty much the best there is, and as you can see, it is decently responsive, not really the best or anything, so if you're expecting to do any art and you want to actually draw, then you might be disappointed. But for what it is, if you want to take handwritten notes and navigate through your display, or maybe play a game like Fruit Ninja or Angry Birds, it will definitely get the job done. So for what it is, I think the stylus we're getting here is perfectly fine. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now, this is honestly a pretty hard one because in a lot of ways, these phones are really similar, and in real life, I feel like you're not really going to notice a significant difference when it comes to the overall experience. That being said though, of course, if you want a phone that has a stylus, the Moto G Stylus 5G will have an advantage. I feel like also when it comes to getting more storage, sure, when it comes to the US carrier versions of these phones, they're most likely going to only have 128. But that being said, you can really easily get the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 unlocked from Motorola, and it will have 256. Whereas with the A54 5G, I feel like the 256GB version is a little bit harder to find, so if that is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. When it comes to the camera, again, I think they are really close. But the A54 5G does have a slight advantage, being able to record 4K videos in the front camera too, whereas with the Moto G Stylus 5G, you can only record 4K videos in the rear. Aside from that, I feel like the performance is basically the same. The battery is pretty much the same. Yeah, the A54 5G has a Super AMOLED versus an IPS LCD, which is technically going to be better when it comes to image quality, but I honestly wouldn't really make a decision based on that, just because with the Moto G Stylus 5G, the image is still so nice that are you really going to notice that much? I mean, let me know in the comments, can you actually see a difference in image quality between the two phones? Because I feel like with Super AMOLED displays, despite them being really nice and premium in real life, their advantages are typically a bit more situational. I mean, if you're outside and really strong sunlight, the Super AMOLED will have an advantage in visibility. But other than that, if you're like inside watching YouTube videos, even the average TV these days is still an IPS LCD, so it's not like this display technology is bad. So in general, even with the display, I would consider the experience about equal. So at the end of the day, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone that has pretty much everything you need for typical daily use, either phone here will be a great choice. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. If you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Stylus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.